you sort of drift into it. It's not a thing you set out and say, oh, I'm going to be a super criminal and I'm going to make my living from this forevermore. That's not the intention. It's all in the short term. You really want to get enough money just to go straight and to get into a straight business. But it doesn't work out that way, you know. You find yourself saying, oh, well, that money's gone. I've invested that, and perhaps not too wisely. I've overspent. I've spent too much money here, and easy come, easy go sort of thing. But it's not easy. It takes a long time before you have a real good touch, and a lot of time, a lot of water goes under the bridge before you're really qualified to carry out such sort of tasks as a really successful robbery. It wasn't out to be the top dog of anything.
Police have only recovered £2 million from this, Britain's biggest cash robbery. A robbery carried out, the judge said, by professional criminals whose aim was to live in luxury.
I suppose the Security Express robbery was the sort of highlight of anybody's career, if you call it that, because it was the biggest cash robbery, and it still stands as the biggest cash robbery. I suppose I was prepared to do anything at that time, providing I felt I was doing the right thing, if you understand. I didn't really, lots of things I could have done, which I didn't do, because morally I thought would have been wrong. But other things I went along with because I felt it was right at the time. They were mad times, they was crazy times, times when life was cheap, you know. There was people getting shot and murdered all the time in those 60s. There was a lot of violence, a lot of vengeance, killings and reprisals and stuff like that. This is where the guy Evans hung under a lorry here when I drove around the block here to try and get him, but he was hanging underneath a lorry, and I drove right by him. And the people came out the pub when they heard the shooting, the guns going off, and they turned around and went back in again. Just here on the right here, it was just here. Yeah, it brings back a few memories. So you always return to the scene of the crime, eh? Banks, post office, the one at the Elephant, we had once, right at the Elephant Castle there, Midland Bank I think it was, that was handy because it was right on the plots. And all round and up at New Cross and Peckham, and there was banks and post offices all over the place. And they were good targets, you know, easy targets really. Because you could get access to the old banks, and the security wasn't like it is today. A lot of them wasn't even built. And then you had the old black and tan safes and the vaults that were, you know, like a bit of butter to get into, you know, in today's standards. They've been there since the year dot, and they hadn't changed. But they rapidly, when we started caning them open, they soon changed then. They soon started spending some money on some new. It was a race against time then, get down them and get the entry down into a bank vault, and find they've just installed a brand new bank vault door, you know. And you'd have to pack up and come out again. Everyone has got a bit of larceny in them, I suppose. It's not the person walking around one way or the other who like something for nothing if they could get their hands on it. And yeah, from small petty crime, if you call it that. But I was providing things for people, and I got a buzz out of that because, I mean, when I was very young, I'd walk in and out shops picking up washing machines and refrigerators with a white coat on and a pencil in my ear and a bit of paper delivery notes out of the pocket, and I used to pick them up, you know, just squat down, do a deadlift, pick them up, walk round the corner and sling them in the back of a van, and then I could sell them at a third of the price I had orders you wouldn't believe, you know, people couldn't afford the real money for them, but they could afford a third. You know, I got a buzz out, a kick out of that. One particular one was like the Battle of Bow, which they attribute to us because of there was a couple of arrests afterwards which pointed the finger at us, but they didn't know until that happened, and that's when the police opened fire or the guards opened fire on the robbers. We wasn't tooled up. We never had any guns. It was a big, strong, armoured van that went through London, delivering to all the big power stations, taking their wages, and it had on board about 150 grand, 145 grand, I think there was. They'd already made one drop, so there was quite a lot of money on it. I got it on the second drop, and it was all in cricket bags, like they used to carry it across in those big leather cricket bags, all lined up along the floor. And there was 2 guards from and a police officer from the city with an Alsatian dog. That was the security on board. And 2 of the guards were armed with revolvers, and which we was unaware of. And when it came to climbing in the back and getting the money, the most important thing, there was 2 men there standing over it with revolvers firing away at us, which hit two of the firm, shot 2 of the firm, and we had to lick our wounds and carry them away. One of the firms got arrested for conspiracy to rob, which was unfortunate. So that put it on the firm. So that became quite a talking point in the underworld. And from then on, people said, "How can you pull out now without guns? You know, if you're going to go and have a big payroll, you're not to know you're walking into a gunfire and bullets being flying around." So it sort of started. There was guns used prior to that, before that, but it made every firm take one with them after that, shotgun. Because for instance, if we had a shotgun that day, we would have got the prize, we would have got the money. You know, if we let a couple go, and then that might have got their heads down and thought twice about shooting us. You know, you don't take it for show. You know, if you have to use it, you got to use it. And that was that at that particular time. Yeah, I was quite prepared to use it if the situation required. Your liberty was at stake, and your associates' liberty were at stake, and you know it would make all the difference. And take the consequences, not deliberately to kill anyone, but you know just to take their legs away from them or something, you know, so that you could get escape, but not intentionally. But of course, once you pull the trigger, you never know what's going to happen. So, you know, but we were prepared to use them. It seemed to change the whole scene, the London scene, and it didn't deter people from going out. It just seemed to make them more determined to go out armed as well. It was a turning point, really. But that was one of the things that sort of elevated you, or without even talking about it or bragging about it, that elevated the firm up a few steps. Well, the firm itself is funny. It's sort of word of mouth. That goes through different circles from different manners. We was all drawn together, not because we'd been school kids together or grown up to that extent. It's just the names and reputations of being good at what you did. I no different to anybody else who was working at that time. There's a lot of good people around, and it's very democratic. There's no big bosses. You sit down and you discuss something, and your campaign's laid out, and you know everybody's values of their worth and what they're capable of, and what they're good at. So they naturally assume those roles. If he's a good driver, he's a good driver, and if he's athletic and he's game, and you get him doing the physical side of it, and if it's a technical burning open a vault or a safe, the man's a good cutter. Everybody knew their job; they knew what they had to do. Or if it's a bellman and do the alarm system, whoever sits down, they know what they're there for. They know why they're sitting there, and you're discussing a bit of work. It's like a campaign, a military campaign with a commander. It's not one man's job. It's everyone knows what he's capable of, and they just assume those roles straight away. There was quite a number of things that enhanced your reputation. Probably one was, I think it was the mystery of it all, really, because there was things used to hit the headlines in the newspapers, and they say, well, the big touch went off, and everyone was looking at everyone else to think, because there's so many firms working in London, and but unfortunately a lot of them, they like the glory to go with it, they wouldn't have a good bit of work off without letting people know that they'd had it, or they wanted the glory as well. But whereas the people I was with, we didn't, nobody knew what we had and what we didn't, and we kept it very tight and close to our chest, and we didn't go around flashing money about, or we kept a very low profile. Probably what a few things attributed to us that we never had, but all the big ones, we near enough had most of the big ones at the time. It was all surprise element, really, and it was all over in a matter of seconds or a minute at the most, And no one was badly hurt, and you was away with the Reddies, It was all, but it was all professionally done, and then of course when it come to doing it, staying over the weekend in the bank and cutting through vaults and things like that, then you needed a bit of expertise, which was that's where other people come in to the firm, who was very good at and capable of doing that, They had a very driving force behind the two of them, and being twins and brothers, they urged each other on and tried to, like one would try and do better than the other one. I've done that, I've got this, and I've managed to do this. I mean, Ronnie Craig was the stronger personality out of the two, the more dominant of the two. That you knew they was for fame and maybe not fortune, but they was going to make their mark on the world, from young. You knew that. I mean, I'm in several photographs from the early days, but I was only trying to keep a low profile, even though I was there at these different events and meetings over the years. I was a lot of people didn't really know why I was there or what I was up to or what I was doing, but they invited me to lots of openings of different gymnasiums and clubs, and I was put in different bits of action that they had going, because they needed me as an ally, because it would give them a bit more strength to knowing that I was behind the scenes, who could come in with a sort of counter punch, or if they needed any help. And I think I must have helped them to get to where they were, by being associated with them. When I think of my childhood when we was in Sheepcote Lane in Battersea, and living opposite these stables, you know, where there was horses and goats and chickens running around and things like that. Everyone was scraping a living somewhere or the other, and the railway was behind the stables, and they used to get up on the railway and rob the trucks and sell it on the outside the front door on a Sunday morning. You know, that was the sort of set up. It seemed that it was a sort of way of life from a very early age, and from there, death and destruction was very common to me, and I just turned to small-time crookedness, which develops into bigger things as you get older. And I remember working for the Southern Railway, and as a van boy, we used to go get these jobs with a bit of extra money to go to the Mint and to the Bank of England and pick up gold from the railway stations. And I sat in the back with millions and millions of pounds worth of bars of gold, and with just one tarpaulin sheet with a little leather strap on the back. And I thought, how easy would somebody with a bit of guts to have a go at this would, you know, could earn fortune, millions. I thought then, you know, there's all that wealth, and it sort of just whet my appetite. So I'd like to get that one day. And sure enough, years later, I managed to do that, you know, get a few bars of gold. Half a ton of gold, actually. I learned through experience with the people taught me things. I mean, you learn it's like serving an apprenticeship, going to college or university. You get proficient of what you're doing only after many years of experience, and you learn the pitfalls and the wrongs and the rights of what you do in life. And I found that I was just progressing towards bigger and better things. If it goes off like clockwork, then that is a successful robbery, and no one's been hurt is an important thing. You know, they may be all roped up. I mean, I've been on work where there's 8 people laid on the floor tied up, but you know, on many occasions that's whole night shifts laid down on the floor. But you know, they're having a cigarette in their mouth and a cup of tea and things like that. If we might be there the whole weekend, which in lots of cases that's what happened, you know. But no one was a bit traumatised, perhaps, but that was about all. So, you know, I don't feel guilty about any of those robberies. The adrenaline is like a fighter getting in the ring. You know, he's in the worst part of it is in the dressing room, or getting to the stadium or where you're going to fight, and you get the butterflies and the nervous tension in your stomach, and then once that bell goes in the ring, everything, you forget everything. And that's the same as going to work on a major robbery. There's nothing better than cutting up a big chunk of money and all going out with a suitcase full of money. I mean, that is beautiful, and it's a lovely feeling. They came to ask the firm, my firm, to go to work on it. So they wanted us to go up into the carrot, take part in the physical side of it, you know. But they did manage quite well without us. It was very successful up to a point. I took them out of this flat that they had in Bermondsey, and I put them in a safer house where they was okay. And fortunately for them, a few days later, they raided the block of flats where where they thought he was. But they didn't smash the door down of where he was, but they did it the one underneath, so they got the wrong floor. But it was definitely he would have been arrested there and then, you know, a few days later, if I hadn't have moved him. And then of course they needed to get passports and to get out of the country, and managed to provide those things for them. And also Eric had quite a big nose at the time, Eric Flowers, so it made him more handsome. He got his nose changed to a nice sort of petite nose. And also Ronnie was a good-looking man anyway, but it just changed his appearance a bit. And I got about the country to Australia. This bit of water here divided South London. It was another world over this side. All the police would never know you. It was in a different territory. And as I say, the East End used to come over to South London and call it Indian territory, because it's a bit hostile. But I stood on them bridges and watched the great train robbers leave and put them on in 5 o'clock in the morning and stand there, go have a bit of breakfast and watch them sail off. Buster Edwards went off there on London Bridge, and Ronnie Biggs, he went off the same way. And an old steamer, yeah, follow it, Brian. And you never know if you're going to see them ever again, you know. But of course, they all turn up eventually. I eventually went to visit Ronnie Biggs out in Brazil some couple of years ago, and I said to him, Ron, don't think about coming back. I said, because I said you got a 30-year sentence. The judge has passed you down 30 years. You've escaped, which means another 2 years for escaping. So you're back to square one, and you'll be doing 30 years again. I said, and they ain't going to change the rules. I said, and especially after escaping and mugging the prison system up. I said, when I went through Wandsworth myself, went through reception, and they showed me a box to screw in there, and the con working in reception. They said, come have a look at this, Fred, and they pulled out this box where you put all your clothes in when you first go in prison, for your released clothes, your civvy clothes, and there was his civvy suit and a mailbag, unfinished mailbag, still laying in the box. And the Screw's laughing. He said, you know, this is for Ronnie when he comes back. And that's it's been a sore in the side of the prison system ever since he escaped. I helped when Buster was a wanted man, Buster Edwards. He was a good friend of mine, Buster, and his wife June. They were very close friends of my wife and I, and at the time. And of course, when he was a wanted man, a year or so later, he was out in Mexico with Bruce Reynolds, and he wanted to throw himself in, so he contacted me. When he came back, Buster, he threw himself in my pub in Lant Street, which sat upstairs, had a bottle of brandy and a few drinks, and he just walked across the road to the Borough Police Station and sat underneath his poster, with his wanted poster, and nobody recognised him, you know. He finished up with 14 years. It's all right if you say it quick, but you haven't got to do it. But it was half the sentence of what the others got. So he was satisfied with that, Buster. He could see the end of it. I think he served 8 years out there. And it was very hard those days, not like today, you know, the sleep deprivation, when they wake you up every 15 minutes banging on your door and switching your light on. They was experimenting with us, so it was hard, really hard in those times. You never saw the exercises and the yards and the cages they put you in, and eight prisoners for 3 or 4 years on, you never see another face or another prisoner, just 8 of you there, you know. It was a hard time. I think the initial shock of getting a prison sentence, the first few months of a prison sentence, is the worst. That is the time to release them and put them out after they've done a couple of months and say, this is what it's all about. You want to spend the next 5 or 6 years like this, and you felt it badly. You felt and woke up every morning looking up at that ceiling. You know, I'm still here. You know, it's a bad dream, really. And then you say, I've got how many Christmases I've got? I've got 5, 6, 7 Christmases I'm going to miss out on, and birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. You're missing all that, and it's a lot to get on with. And your mind is, from the beginning of a sentence, your mind is half in prison and half over the wall outside. And it's only after you've been there for 18 months to 2 years that you completely try and switch off from the outside world, and your mind centres on prison life, and it comes easier. It wasn't as though you was, this is my manor, you know, it's a bit strong to say that. Same as with the twins over in the East End. They didn't run the whole of the East End. There were still other firms and other people in different areas where they didn't tread on their toes. They didn't encroach on their little area where they was got their pubs and clubs. You know, it wasn't divided up like that, really, you know. If anyone came in your area and they started kicking off there and causing problems and trouble, you'd find that the other publicans or the business people would come to you for a bit of help, you know, for a bit of support. Say, can you have a word with them? And I might go around and see someone say, oh, keep out of that pub, go down somewhere, go out off the manor, you know, if you want to go upsetting people and causing trouble. Go somewhere else and drink, keep out of there. And you earn that little bit of respect from nuisances, and a few of them who really stepped out of line got served up one way or the other, you know. So you was like a police in the area in a way, you know, in that sort of sense. We would invest our money in the areas that we was known in, because that's where you had a more sort of pulling power to do it, set up business. So you seem to stick to your own little areas, your manors, as you call it, because you know if you opened a pub, you'd fill it up with people you knew locally. Behind me now is the Prince of Wales pub, which I took over back in 1963, just around the time of the Great Train Robbery, and it became quite well known. People used to call, all the cab drivers used to say, well, Foreman's pub, and they never even knew the name of the pub really at the time, but every cab driver knew it in the area. And of course the craze used to come over every so, and they used to make what they call to the Indian country, the South London, and they used to come over about 20 or 30 handed and absolutely pack the place out with all the regulars. But it was a talking point at the time, you know. Happy times, happy days there. Until we're the spot I'm standing on now, and I was arrested in the swoop that they made when just getting in the car here one afternoon, and it was on me, and that was it. And I didn't see it for another 10 years, this pub. Well, I had it in partnership with a fella called Bernie Coleman, who was he was a local publican as well. He had several pubs in this area, a well-respected man. And we converted it into a nightclub and a discotheque and a restaurant and also a casino. And this is a casino where George Raft, the Hollywood actor, came over and opened it for me. The place used to be absolutely chock-a-block, banged out every weekend, and right through the week. It was very busy. And of course it was the first casino in this area, so it was very popular. My friends and associates who were with me was always willing to help out, and if it got out of, you know, it was a bit of fisticuffs, and then it became a bit of baseball bats, and at the finish there's a couple of shootings occurred. It was the only sort of message they understood. One particular day was about 15 or 20 handed came in, and with a few girlfriends, and I was upstairs in the casino, and someone came up and said, "Oh, there's trouble downstairs, Fred." So I'll go downstairs, and just as I'm going downstairs, all these people were making their way out. So I let them get out the club. I said let them go. So I walk into the club and see what's happened, what they'd actually done, and there's this young girl, could have been 17, I suppose, 17 or 18. And she's laying on the floor, and she's been knocked spark out, and her jaw's gone. You know, this one of these guys has actually broken her jaw, hit her on the jaw. They went to the boot of their car, opened the boot of the car, and got out 2 pickaxe handles and smacking them in their hand, coming and inviting us to have a row with them. And I thought, week after week, all you keep doing is fighting and ejecting people and troublemakers. And these were the type of people who, if you hurt them once, they come back again, yeah, and keep coming back and back. So I pulled out the little piece and the little equaliser, as they called it, and I just give them a couple of little shots, you know, to pair of them. They both got it, but only not to kill them in or anything like that, just to maim them a little bit, you know. The one got his ear blown off there, and the other one got a little one through the shoulder. But unfortunately, when people do that, they don't realise that there's a ricochet, and it don't go in one side and out the other side. If it hits a bone, it ricochets around the body. And unfortunately, that's what happened with him, and he went around and come out somewhere else, which was very lucky. And it's a lesson well learned, you know, to anyone who don't really intend to shoot anyone, but accidents can happen. But those were the times then. It was a time when, you know, you had to dish out that sort of treatment to people. My father used to fight his brother-in-law on a regular occasion. You know, it was like, who's going to win this week? You know, and I witnessed all that. So the violence was inbred in you, you know, and that was the entertainment on a Saturday night, to see 2 men, you know, bashing the granny out of each other. And I remember even when I was little, my brothers used to put me up on a windowsill so I could see better, you know, and they just stick me up there to watch it all. And the violence was just part of growing up and living. I got a reputation of being a straightener, which I had many straighteners with people, and held my own on the cobbles, as they say, and shook hands afterwards, and you know, had a drink afterwards, because that's how I was brought up that way. But there were times when if knives were used and things and weapons, then course you had to go back with the same, prepared the same way. I mean, the razor slashing was a thing that was to prevent a man getting a living as a criminal, because you mark his face with a razor. So he can't walk in anywhere, because immediately wherever he's intended to, if he's a con man or a robber or a thief, or as soon as he walks in the door they see that razor cut on his face, they know he's a criminal. It's like putting a criminal across your forehead. So that was the idea of striping people in those days. George was having a meal with his wife, and he had 3 kids, 3 daughters then. And he went to the door, answered the door, and he opened the door, and next thing he didn't know anything, he was flash, and he hit the back of the passage. He'd been shot with a 12-bore shotgun, and it caught him the top of the leg and the thigh, aimed at his private parts, but fortunately they was all intact, you know, nothing happened with him. But there was a big hole in his leg, like something like that. And I was unaware of all this. I was unaware of any relationship that might have been going on. And I was notified that to get to St Thomas's Hospital, for George was in hospital. I didn't know what had happened or anything until I get to the hospital. And when I saw the state he was in, they was talking about amputating his leg and everything, you know, and couldn't stop the bleeding, and he looked dreadful. And they had police at the bedside, and one of them sat there, went and had a cigarette. He said, all right, but he walked out the ward, and I could have a little private talk with him, and he told me the only one he recognised who knocked on the door was the Ginger Marks fella. Well, it had to be avenged, what had taken place. And they was bragging about it. They was at parties and drinking and sitting on the floor with shotguns and send the foremans round. But it's only when they realised that you know that there was more to it, that they realised what they'd done, and they wasn't playing with any you know mugs sort of thing. There's gonna be a reprisal, and of course that things about a month so later. That's when I managed to catch up with him, and he was very lucky because he was Emmons got escaped that night by using him as a shield and dancing around behind him, Marks, but he was the main one, and he legged it round the street and under the back of a van, and drove around to try and get hold of him, the cop for him, but he was hanging under this truck or something, and drove past him, circled it, and he managed to. He ran straight round to the Cray twins' house for help and support, which they refused him because they knew that he'd rowed with me, so they gave him no help or assistance, and said, "You get on with it," you know. And from that day on, it's been a bit of cat and mouse sort of thing, you know. And of course, by declaring it all, if anything happened to him, if he gets run over in the street, they'd probably be knocking at my door and blaming me for it. So, you know, these things are best left alone, I think, now. Just round there was where Ginger Marks had disappeared, and the guy Evans was shot, but he had a bulletproof vest on him, so he escaped that night. Unfortunately, yeah, it had to be done. You got the whole of London waiting for it to happen. All the underworlders looking and waiting for something to happen. They knew it was only a matter of time. Like all things, time. They all get sorted out eventually. If you compare it to politicians can commit so many misdemeanours, and next thing you know, they're getting all the publicity of what they've done and what they haven't done, and they're back in the government, or they've got another post, they're back there. But in the criminal fraternity, the criminal world, if you step out once, all you need to do is make one real mistake, and you're never forgiven for that, and that will go down with you till the day you die. That was the rules of the game, you know. It was unfortunate that Mark's happened, but he wouldn't have got it all if he hadn't have been held up as a shield. It wasn't him who was the target, it was the other fellow who was the target. But unfortunately, it's not accidental. He was party to it. He was an accessory to the fact of trying to kill my brother. The man was a very dangerous man, very dangerous, because he'd spent all his life. This is where prison doesn't work, and from an early ages, he'd been incarcerated all his life practically, and he'd been certified on a couple of occasions, and he escaped, and he got lifed off. I mean, he never actually killed anyone, but he was sentenced to a life. And but being the temperament he was, he decided to escape, really. I mean, he had it made down in Dartmoor. He was out of a day, riding the moors on ponies and things like that, and being well looked after. The twins were looking after him, sending girls down there for him to take in the haystacks, and money to treat all the locals in the local pub, and living off the fat of the land. But they picked him up and brought him back to London. And of course, when he was incarcerated in a flat, and he never had the freedom that he had while he was in prison on the moor. And anyway, that was the end result, was Frank had to be disposed of some way or the other. I do have regrets, but you know, what future? There was no future for him. He just spent the rest of his life in the nick till he'd have probably got worse mentally because of you know, they get the old liquid cosh out and medications like they did with Ronnie Cray, and you see people just deteriorate till they're like a cabbage, you know. So there's nothing. They've got no will or physical. They just vegetate. So it was. It's like someone suffering with a tragic illness, you know. You say, well, I'd rather get it over with and done with, rather than suffer all these years. And it seemed the only way out, really. As I said before, the gold Brinksmat was turned out to be a lucky bit of work, but at least the Security Express knew what it was going after, and they knew there was a lot of cash there, millions, and it turned out to be millions, yeah. And I think that was, and nobody was hurt on the robbery, and nobody was injured. They was all treated fair enough, and it was a weekend work which caused a lot of nerves and stress. But on all the robberies that I personally took part in, there was the less violence used, the better, and the easier you got it, which is always an element of surprise, and immobilising the people just by getting hold of them and putting a bit of rope around them a bit, and holding them and getting them in a position where they were sort of defenceless. And that's a bit of a shock to anybody, but it's better than smashing them and knocking them unconscious or doing unnecessary violence. And I always felt, you know, the less used, the better. And of course, if you ever happen to fall over and get arrested for something like that, you know, of course the penalty wouldn't be so bad because you've not used unnecessary violence. And they're only ordinary workers anyway. They could be someone's father or brother or husband, and why, they're only doing a job, so why, well, it's not necessary. That's how I looked at it. And nearly all the robberies I've ever took, but in some big major robberies, and none of them went to hospital. Nobody went to hospital. On one occasion, maybe. But that was unfortunate. And the majority of it was worked professional. Like a professional, one of the chaps professionally, he knows there's no value in hurting people if he can get the money, sweet.
7 years after the Security Express robbery, an armed convoy arrives at the Old Bailey, bringing Frederick Foreman to trial. Opening the case against Foreman, Michael Worsley QC said he took part in the largest robbery of actual cash there had ever been in English history. £6 million taken in banknotes from the Security Express headquarters after staff were tied up. Foreman, the Crown allege, was one of the robbers who got away, taking refuge in a hotel in Spain, from which, at the time, there was no possibility of extradition. With him, it's claimed, went over £300,000.
It was like living in Hollywood. I mean, it was unreal. I finished up with a country club that I was running in partnership with someone else, and it was one round of pleasure, really, you know. And of course, I had plenty of money to spend, and it was barbecues and club openings and new house warmings and parties every day of the week, and the nightlife was unbelievable, you know, because you could sleep around the pool the next day, and it was one round of pleasure, really. Just as well they did bring me back. I think I'd been dead by now because I was enjoying myself so much, you know. But there you are, that went with the territory, and I thoroughly enjoyed it the time I spent out there. There were so many people out there from all different countries, and apparently they tell me that the place nosedived. It went down completely because they thought, if this can happen to Fred, then this could happen to any one of us. So there was a mass exodus from the Costa del Sol, you know, to other parts of the world, and I've been back there several times, and it's not the same anymore. It seems to have lost that. I mean, a bit grotty and sordiness that there was then. It's all clean and tidy, and I don't know. It's lost the magic of the place, you know. I thought I'd have to I used delay tactics as much as I could. I tried to smash the car up inside the car. I tried to have a row with them at the airport, and I got away from them and running around there like the Keystone Cops, running around the plane, and the pilot looking out the plane. I thought, well, he's never going to take off if he sees this going on, which we wasn't entitled to, because that's the rules and regulations that anyone who disrupts the airline will have to stay put, won't they, or go to the nearest airport. So I was trying to prevent getting, because I knew what was in store, and knowing full well that they'd already sentenced two of the firm to 22 years in prison. I knew that was what I was looking at, 22 years. So I thought, well, you know, anything goes now. Looking in hindsight, when I look back, it's probably one of the best things that happened in a way, because I got it dealt with and done with, and it's all past now, it's over with. And I can relax and live my life a bit without looking over my shoulder, you know. An old friend of mine, Pat Shamara, who was one of the firm, he used to say, he'd get on the phone and say, is brown bread there, you know. And then that was shortened to brown bread, Fred, is brown there, and it would be brown, you know. Now they've got the name of Brown. And then, I was like a benevolent uncle to a lot of people, and they used to say, is Uncle there, Uncle Fred there, you know. And I was an uncle then, and so on and so on. And then of course later on they was calling us the eye executioners and things like that, you know, which we never knew about. I didn't know nothing about that. Mothers used to come in on visits, and that you knew them from probably from Bermondsey or wherever, and they say, keep an eye on my boy, you know, for me, Fred, and on the visits, you know, look after him. He was looking after people. The whole objective was when you reached a certain age, you would want to hang your gloves up and retire, and you didn't want any more. You know, you knew that law of averages, you're going to fall over one day, and you want to be young enough to be able to do the bird and come out again and have some money to show for it. And of course, I mean, I was 37 by the time I've got the first 10-year sentence. So, and you know, they know that the judiciary know that that's your dangerous time from, you know, from your early teens, 20s and 30s to 40s. If they can lock you away for 10 stretch of that, it slows you right down. And most people anyway, and they get a big sentence. They don't have no more. They say that's enough, and they swallow it. But unfortunately, I was still at it when I was 54 years of age. But you know, that's the way things go. But needs must if you come out of prison and you do a sort of back to square one again. Well, I suppose a chap, you could define a chap by saying that he's an experienced at what he does. If he's a criminal, at least he's proficient in what he does, and over the years he's learnt to play by the rules, like the sort of underworld code, and he's reliable and he's honest to his associates and truthful, and he's staunch, and he's got nerve, and he's game, and all the good qualities you need in a soldier, really, you know. But above all, if he falls and he gets arrested or whatever it may be, you know he'll never roll over. He'll rather die rather than to betray his friends and his colleagues, you know. It's such a lot of headaches and aggravation, and when you reach a certain age, you'd rather not. You want a bit of a peaceful life now. You need but I'm not leaving myself open to anyone to take advantage of me, because there's still a bit of fire in the belly. They're still there. Yeah, I've got one major regret. I missed that fucking Jimmy Evans. I'd like to cop for him that night, but it saved a lot of aggravation. But apart, yeah, you've got regrets in life, and all in all, I don't get any sleepless nights over anything really. Things I would have done differently, and of course, looking in hindsight, looking back, I would have done things better, certain things better, and not left myself open to being manipulated, and you know, had a better judgment on certain things, you know. But it's been enjoyable and painful life, and I've not got many regrets, but probably people think I should have, but I haven't. And I feel like when my time's up, at least I've had an eventful life, if nothing else.